Hello, everyone. I'm so excited to be here with y'all today. Um, and I put something in the chat as people are coming in. If you can take a look in there and share with us what it is that you do for a living, we're going to go back and look at that at a later time. So, welcome to the first in our series of Living Well with ADHD webinars for high achievers with ADHD. We're doing this for the first time today, so please forgive any technical clumsiness and bear with us as we get going. I know how hard it is to carve out time and attention and to show up. So I want to start by giving you a big thank you for being here. And for those of you who are here now, for being here on time. For nearly 20 years, I've been working with exceptionally smart, highly educated, wickedly talented, overstressed, overworked, overwhelmed, and feeling successful on the outside adults with ADHD. I call them high achievers. And today I'm with you to try to shed some light on what it means to be a high achiever with ADHD. I'm Casey Dixon, and I'm a life coach for high achievers with ADHD. And I'm on a mission to support creative, whip smart, engaged humans with ADHD to live well. For the next 20 minutes or so, we're going to be exploring what it means to be a high achiever with ADHD. I want you to write some questions that you have into the chat at the end. If you put them into the chat beforehand, other people might answer them, but I will likely not see them. I can't promise I'm going to reply to them all, but I'm going to give it a go once we're done with this portion of the webinar. So many years ago, I had a day of coaching that I will always remember. It was an awesome coaching day. One client after another they were being really insightful about their own strengths and limitations, designing ways of thinking and doing to make real positive changes. Coaching was working. When I was basking in this little glow, I realized that when clients reach out to us for coaching, they generally don't feel in control of their ADHD. They're noticing difficult struggles and looking for help to make life easier, less stressful, and more productive so that they can achieve more of value with less effort. And even though each of my clients is working towards more effectively managing their ADHD while having ADHD, they're each and every one of them very successful adults already. They have high educational attainment. They have occupational success, even though they don't always feel this way. So we have, let's see if the chat has to say. If you have your occupation, you could put it in there. I'm not seeing anything in there. Am I missing it? Okay, so what we know as people are coming in and doing that, we have in today's webinar a bunch of people who are identifying with these professions. We have attorney, audiologist, accountant, dietitian, software engineer, librarian, all of those different folks that you can see. So you get the idea of the levels of achievement that can accompany ADHD. Many high achievers have established relationships and partnerships, and they are managing their finances. And they're focusing on their health and their well-being. Then I bumped into this mysterious paradox. How could this be? Okay, so why am I even asking how could this be? Why was I stuck in this paradox? Okay, it's because as a society and as ADHD experts, we've been collectively disbelieving that high achievers can have ADHD. Doctors, clinicians, coaches, teachers, parents, and even those with ADHD themselves ask, is this true? Can I have ADHD and be this smart, this driven, or this successful? Is it really so contradictory for people with ADHD to become high achieving adults? Well, if you read as many books and research articles and attend as many presentations and talk to as many ADHD experts on ADHD as I do, you're going to know that ADHD predicts a high risk for negative adult outcomes. So before I go down this kind of bleak list, I want you to turn on your questioning brain. and ask, are the following outcomes real for all adults with ADHD? And are all of them real for me? So, how negative are the predicted negative outcomes? Does this look familiar, this list? It's predicted that adults with ADHD will experience a higher risk for limited educational attainment. According to the research, adults with ADHD complete fewer years of education, nearly about a third not completing high school, and about 5% graduating from college. And this is compared to about 40 to 50% of college graduates in the general population. Occupational differences and problems also go with ADHD. Adults with ADHD are reported to be 6 times more likely to be in occupations that require no schooling or formal occupational training, and 61% more likely to have been fired than adults without ADHD. They can experience relationship challenges. For example, the research says they're more than twice as likely to divorce than adults without ADHD. And they tend to have lower financial earning and savings, on average, earning 25% less a year than adults without ADHD, and saving about 50% less relative to non ADHD adults. And they're at a greater risk for health problems, which there's lots of talk about this from the powerful research results from Russell Barkley's study, which shows serious health complications can accompany ADHD. Before you run away feeling terrible, first, I'd like you to know that diagnosis and treatment have been shown to mitigate these negative outcomes, making the outcomes more positive. So if you only take away one message from today, make sure that if you suspect you might have ADHD, getting a diagnosis and effective treatment can have a powerful positive impact on your life. Second, most of the research and data these predictors is based on are pretty old, and more recent studies are showing a wider range of adult outcomes. We understand so much more about ADHD now than we did even a short time ago. What we know about ADHD using research-based samples also does not adequately reflect this improved understanding. For example, we now know that you can have a really high IQ, do well in school, and have ADHD. And also, the research was mostly conducted with non-inclusive populations. And I know many of you are familiar with this, meaning mostly white boys and young men. And part of our improved understanding is that we know that ADHD can show up in all of us, albeit in a no size fits all kind of way. With that said, I have to give a huge shout out to the research on ADHD and to our researchers. Without research studies, we would be completely lost. And when people make claims about ADHD, my opinion is they should be research-based. The main point I'm trying to make is that high achievers were left out. If you have ADHD and been told by others or by yourself that you're too educated, too smart, or too successful to have it, please know that you were left out of most of the research. When you hear terrible things about ADHD, you might want to ask, does this apply to me? Before making yourself feel sick about it. So this is the mystery. What do the high achievers with ADHD that I know have in common? What made the difference for them? While working with my clients and reading studies, I identified 4 characteristics of high achievers with ADHD. The first is that they have and use unique interests and talents. We see this in the media all the time with athletes and rock stars and Olympians and actors and CEOs. And we know from all the experts and our experiences that adults with ADHD often work really effectively when they have a strong personal interest in something, despite struggles with focus, organization, consistent effort, procrastination, and forgetfulness. Interest changes our brain chemistry, releasing dopamine and other nice things, which drives motivation and helps to improve our executive functions. So in essence, negative ADHD symptoms are less severe when adults engage in things that are interesting to them. So what can you do? Here are some questions to ponder to help you capitalize on your own talents and interests. What are your unique talents? These can be big global things like I'm a talented creative problem solver, or specific things like I'm adept at making detailed spreadsheets. What are your areas of highest interest? What drives you to learn more? Where does your curiosity go to play? It can help to ask yourself, what do I want to be known for? And how can you spend more time and energy in these areas and less elsewhere? Exploring these questions can help you devote more time and energy to things that really matter to you and spend less energy doing things that don't matter. This shift's going to reduce the negative impact of having ADHD. The second characteristic of high achievers with ADHD is that they can do well in school. Now, I fully acknowledge that you do not have to have an advanced degree, college degree to be successful as an adult. Many of our biggest high achievers skipped out on that part. But if you train for a profession with an education, it's easier to achieve. And it's almost essential for our knowledge workers, professors and lawyers and accountants to train with an education. And as evidenced in by the people in this webinar, they go on to earn advanced degrees quite often. Admittedly, many people with ADHD struggle mightily in school. This is a true part of the research findings. But for some people, school is exactly the right context for them to thrive. Good schooling provides external structure, support, routines, deadlines, external accountability. They need to excel. Things only start to unravel when they leave school and start in the workplace, which often requires them to direct and regulate themselves and manage an increased variety and number of tasks. Those who excel in school or have a high IQ are often undiagnosed until later in life, not always, but often, and are left out of statistics on academic achievement altogether. But being really smart and doing well in school do not rule out ADHD. So you might be saying, but I'm done with my education. What does this mean for me now? Well, you might have missed the diagnostic boat. If you think you maybe have ADHD and have done well academically, find a provider to do a diagnostic workup. Do not buy into the incorrect view that you might not be, that you're too successful to be ADHD. And if you have kids or work with kids with ADHD, the same goes for them too. Throw away the outdated concept that you or your kids might be too smart or successful to have ADHD and investigate. Remember, treatment mitigates those nasty adult outcomes. If you're finished with your education, you can think about what worked for you in school. You can find ways to implement those things now in your work or your life. What kinds of structure, supports, and habits helped you to manage your school life? Can you create some of those helpful tactics in your current life? The third characteristic for high achievers is that they work harder. Typically, high achievers with ADHD work exceptionally hard at their jobs to handle some of the inherent inefficiencies that come along with ADHD. They'll work later, on weekends, or during lunch to make sure they're producing as expected. Everyone in this room has worked hard to achieve positive outcomes. My clients share a consistent message with me. ADHD makes life and work harder, less efficient, more complicated, less consistent, simply harder, especially for those mundane routine tasks. Often tasks take longer than they would if ADHD were not part of the picture, and sometimes they take less time. This is very dependent on where your brain chemistry is at the moment. My clients report that things take them longer than they think they should, and that they lose track or run out of time and end up working long days or all-nighters. To be successful with ADHD, you need to implement some elaborate tactics around planning, organizing, reminding yourself, etc., which adds an additional burden of work and time to an already full plate. Many adults with ADHD work harder to try to compensate for their perceived poor performance or having to pay that ADHD tax. But you don't have to work harder at everything. Working harder on everything all the time is just not sustainable. It's too hard. It helps to seek alternatives to self-sacrificing your well-being to the demands of the moment. So here's some things that you can try. Notice what types of work require you to work harder and are worth the extra effort. Notice what types of work require you to work harder and are not worth the extra effort. And set some tight boundaries around working harder, especially on things that aren't worth it. Focus on your well being. So eat, sleep, breathe, and move before you focus on your work. And ask yourself, what would it look like if you could spend less time and energy on the things that are the most difficult for you? The fourth characteristic of high achievers with ADHD is that they seek support. Generally, those who achieve a lot in life have support from others, their parents, a teacher, a special mentor, a spouse, or a coach. This is true for adults with ADHD as well, and it can be even more important for them. Talking to somebody and seeking help can lead to higher achievement. Support includes appropriate treatment for ADHD. I've mentioned that according to research, treatment for ADHD significantly improves long-term outcomes in all areas of adult functioning. Treatment can include ADHD diagnosis, medication, and what's called non-pharmacological treatments like ADHD coaching. Part of being a high achiever with ADHD is seeking out support when you know you would benefit from the help, a new perspective, or a little guidance. It can also mean telling your friends about your struggles, delegating tasks that you don't have to be you in order to do, asking for help from loved ones or teachers or associates at work, all of which can be done without disclosing your ADHD. Here are some things to try. Think about the support that has worked for you in the past and see if you can use any of that now. List areas of your life that would benefit from greater support and write down some steps to take to get support. And this is part of the changing nature of what we understand about ADHD. Most of us do not outgrow it. So sustain treatment and support into adulthood. When I bumped up against the mysterious paradox of being a high achiever with ADHD, I stood back and thought carefully about my clients. I realized that part of their experience is to exist in the paradox, to get comfortable with the seeming contradictory nature of struggling with executive functions while performing at a high level. They must deeply understand that life outcomes are more difficult for them to achieve, while at the same time understand they can use their interests and talents, their smarts, working harder at what matters, and getting support to help them achieve quite a lot. High achievers with ADHD do exist. People with ADHD are not doomed to negative adult outcomes. I know this is true because I witness it firsthand every day. I wanted to share my references with you so that you can see that I actually do love research. It's just a little screenshot there. And I'd like to try this as a next step. If this resonated with you, feel free to download the workbook that accompanies this topic, Mysterious Paradox Being a High Achiever with ADHD, at that link. Or we also have a little eCourse by the same title that has short, easy to digest 5 lessons to help you deepen your understanding what it means to be successful. High performer who also happens to struggle with ADHD. It's about 45 minutes of video and worksheets. And if you found this valuable, look up for announcements for upcoming webinars where I'm going to talk about how to develop habits that help ADHD, how to take effective breaks, daily routines, task initiation, getting to sleep, and how to go from bad to badass when you have ADHD. I have about, I don't know, 10 minutes or so. No, I don't know, some minutes. If you have questions, I will be answering them. I want to remind you that this is being recorded. So if you post your questions and I repeat the question, then I am going to, it'll be a part of that recording. So make sure that you want to share, put your questions into the chat. And yes, somebody asked if I'm going to share the links, which I'm going to try to do right now as I stop sharing my screen.
Casey, this is Christine, your business manager. I will put the links in the chat and you can just focus on answering questions that are coming in.
Okay, thank you. And for everybody who heard that, that was Christine, who is our business manager here. So I appreciate that. So if there are questions, I'm happy to take them. And I'm looking back at the chat to see if there are comments. And there is one. what is the difference between coaching and therapy for people with ADHD? So thank you for that question. This is kind of a funny question because even coaches have to be trained how to answer it. But basically, I think they're both very useful as part of a non-pharmacological treatment for people with ADHD. Therapy is crucial. If you're having long-standing issues that have come from your past or from past traumas that you need to work out in order to gain some emotional regulation and get control of sort of how you process the way you're thinking, to let you take your ADHD to the next level through coaching. So, coaching is really here to focus on the past and the future. I mean, sorry, the present and the future more so than the past. It's a very pragmatic approach, and we're really focusing on where are you now and how are we going to get you to where you would like to be tomorrow, using very pragmatic approaches. It's also a great place in coaching to gain some more knowledge about what it means to have ADHD, and how it affects you. Coaching also does work with emotions like therapy does, but in a way that is very focused on what can we do to move into action so that you're able to use your executive functions to reach your goals. I hope that makes sense. Um, yeah, what are some of the ways that coaching can be helpful for high achievers with ADHD? Can I give some examples? Um, so in the eCourse, there's tons and tons of examples from clients of mine if you're interested in that. And there are some in that workbook, I think. But I run into this every day. So high achievers with ADHD tend to come to Dixon Life Coaching when their plate's really full. They're either overwhelmed with things at work, or they're realizing that they're not paying attention to their personal lives or their health as much as they would like to be, and they want to focus on their well-being. So it can be occupational, but it can also be more global, which is why we call it life coaching. But they often come really overwhelmed. They're feeling like um, they don't have good ways of managing their time and energy. They put too much on their plate. They would like to gain some sense of agency or control over what it is that they're doing. So when you're talking in coaching with clients, really coaching is there to respond to them in that moment. So we don't have an agenda in coaching. We base it on what the clients bring. But examples are how to develop effective daily routines so that you're not wasting a lot of that working hard energy on getting ready in the morning, figuring out what to eat, logging billable hours if you're an attorney. So all of those things that can be harder when you have these, especially mundane tasks, but also how your emotions might be getting in the way. So I had an attorney in a group the other day who was saying, she and her therapist, and this is where therapy can augment coaching. We're talking about how she always wants to have an A+ in every single thing that she does throughout the day, whether it's making drip coffee in the morning or working with top level clients, doesn't matter. So one of the things that we work on is identifying the things of greatest value for the A+ driven professional that she is, and deciding, you know what, I'm just going to see if I can change my expectations on the things that aren't of the highest value for me. And this is hard for people with ADHD because oftentimes, especially if you're a really fast thinker and really bright, you can think that everything is of equal importance, right? How I make my coffee in the morning is just as crucial to my sense of self and well-being as meeting with that important client this afternoon. So we can really identify areas of specific need, things that you're noticing that might need some of your time and attention, talk through it together in a partnership of coaching, come up with a designed action step series, and then, and this is the crucial part for people with ADHD, helping you to follow through on your intentions, right? Because I know everybody in here can dream up how they would like it to look, whatever it is that you're noticing. But actually following through in a consistent way is where your coach can be a really important and powerful ally. Okay, I'm trying to scroll through the chat. And there's a lot of, yeah, tips for calming yourself in the moment when ADHD drives you to feel suddenly overwhelmed. Thank you so much for that question, because this is one of the things that happens, and high achievers are not immune to this, and that is this sort of emotional flooding or agitation that can come with feeling overwhelmed, feeling under pressure, dealing with all of the things. And if you have a really full plate, you're carrying that around all the time, constantly making decisions, and you've worn yourself out. So, calming yourself can happen in a lot of ways. And I know one of the things that we talk about, that I talk about a lot with ADHD, is using mindfulness practices. And I know that we have some mindfulness experts and friends in this webinar today. But I do have a website called Mindfully ADD, which is a membership site that has mindfulness practices designed for people with ADHD. So, having some go to strategies, whether it's mindfulness or something else, can really help. Usually, it means what I call doing a physical reboot. So, do you need to sort of step back? What's most effective for you? Is it stepping back and doing some calming mindfulness practices where you're meditating or focusing on your breathing or parts of your body or words that you're using? Or do you need to ramp it up and get some of that energy out of your physical system by jumping rope or dancing to your favorite loud, crazy song? Sometimes it means going outside and looking at things that are not on your screen or right in front of you. So physical rebooting is a really effective way of doing that. If there's something that's really that you're perseverating on, writing it down gets it out of your head. And for people with ADHD, that's one of the most effective tactics for figuring out how to manage this, is to get stuff out of your head and into the real world so that you don't have to carry it around with you. Because here's another thing that people with ADHD do. They think they're going to forget whatever's crossing their mind at the moment. So they sort of hold on to it in your brain. So if you can get it out of your brain, you might be able to move beyond after you've processed that thing to get some stuff done. I hope that helps and answers your question. Let me scroll back here. Philip asked, how long do coachee relationships last? It depends on the coach that you're working with. At Dixon Life Coaching, we have group programs for coaching groups, and they last for 3 months. We also have coaching like workshops that can be shorter. But traditionally, when you're working one-on-one, you should expect to work with your coach for about 6 months. The reason we do this is that when you first start with your coach, you're really excited about the possibilities, and you should be. And things seem to be working for you in an effective way. And that's novel. And we all know that people with ADHD love novelty. And when things are new, they're really invested and excited, and they're able to focus on them in a different way. But as that sort of patina of newness wears off and the novelty goes away, things become a little bit more difficult to implement. And this is true not just for coaching, but for a lot of things that people with ADHD try to do, like daily planning. How many people in here have tried to do their daily planning and were great at it? Yeah, I see some hands being raised, for a couple of weeks or even a couple of months, but then it just sort of drifts away. So we want you to be partnered with your coach during that sort of end of the novelty phase, so that they can be there with you for accountability and processing and sort of working through modifying tactics, so that by the end of that period, you have some tactics and new ways of thinking that stick around for the long term. So that is how that works. At least it works for us this way. Different coaches have different ways of, I guess, packaging their coaching services, but all of our one-to-one engagements are 6 months. And somebody said, what are your approaches to imposter syndrome? Imposter syndrome is is when you sort of feel like you aren't qualified or ready or prepared or adept for whatever it is that you do, and yet you really are, and or at least you're prepared enough. And I think this is especially difficult for people who are highly driven, highly competitive, high achievers with ADHD, because the gap between what they expect of themselves and what they are performing can sometimes be, it feels like a huge gulf, even though oftentimes the way that they're performing is pretty darn good, but their expectations tend to be really high. You expect consistent performance, which doesn't always happen, right? When you have ADHD, they expect consistent performance through time and on all tasks. So I think one of the things that really does help with imposter syndrome with our clients is to talk about what it is that your expectations are and how do we adjust those in different contexts to help you to approach them in a new way. The other thing that we do is sort of turn down that constant feeling of I'm not meeting up to expectations by giving you more time and energy through helping you to discover how to make your life a little easier through things like automatic habits that are supportive instead of not supportive, and routines and different ways of approaching tasks so you don't end up in those really deep time and energy consuming rabbit holes of hyper focus. So there's all sorts of different strategies that can help to alleviate part of the contributing factors to imposter syndrome. If you're interested, you can learn more of those specific tactics in our online course, which is called Live Well ADHD. It has like everything from learning about the ADHD brain to how to stay motivated, to how to design your day, to how to eat, sleep, breathe, and move, to how to stack your tactics so you're not just relying on one. So that may be helpful to you. And it may not. Now I'm running up against 12:30. Actually, we're a couple minutes over. So I'm going to say I am so grateful for everybody who's been here today, for your time and your attention, because I know how difficult it is to make time and give attention in the middle of a busy, what is this, a Tuesday? I don't know. Anyway, I appreciate you very much. And I will see you next time we have one of our Living Well with ADHD webinars.